Konami's given us a new tryout duel. Is it a trick, or is it a treat? Let's find out. Folks, I'm the Ghost Knife, and welcome back to more Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. And as you see, today we are playing the brand new Duel Trial event featuring the two newest monsters in Master Duel, Hallo and Ween. Now, the event ended yesterday, but you will be seeing this on actual Hallo Ween. And funny story, I woke up, got on Master Duel, and found out this was the last day of this event, and then kind of panicked and decided to record this at the last second because I really wanted to try this out. I wanted to try out the new cards, and I wanted to see what this event had to offer. It offers us two event decks featuring both of the new monsters, Hallo and Ween. Now, what you need to know about these monsters, is I'm going to go ahead and pull up one of them, is that they are a fiend and a zombie, and both of the cards have specific effects when you use those type of cards within your deck. Hallo and Ween have very similar effects. When you normally special summon them, you activate the effect, and if it's still on the board after the effect activates, your opponent chooses to either give the monster a bunch of attack for each fiend and or zombie in the case of Ween in your graveyard, or they are burned for 500 points of damage for each fiend or zombie in your graveyard. And if it's destroyed by battle or card effect, they both have different effects. Hallo allows you to send one of your opponent's monsters to the graveyard, and Ween allows you to resurrect one of your opponent's monsters from their graveyard. Both have some really interesting things they do. I don't think they're going to shake up the meta too much, but they're fun, and fun cards are always good for the meta. As you can see, Hallo's deck is an Unchained deck, which is not very meta, but don't worry about it, neither is Ween's deck. It's going to be doing a lot of fiend nonsense. You do get some pretty powerful cards like Yama, and Blue Dog, and Red Dog, and the Unchained Abomination, but there's just enough jank in it that it kind of waters down the experience because you only have one of both of your traps, which is pretty rough for the Unchained deck. Now, Ween's deck is going to be zombie themed. What kind of zombies is it going to use? It's going to use vampires, an archetype that I have not actually gotten a lot of experience with. Basically, vampires are a lot like monarchs. They want to summon a bunch of smaller monsters. They contribute summon their bigger monsters that have bigger impacts. However, in combination with this, they have some link monsters in Fascinator and Sucker, which are pretty powerful. And they also have Dompier Vampire Sheridan and the Zombie Vampire. The Zombie Vampire is really good for milling, which is great for cards like Mezuki, so you can keep the special summon chain going. And Dompier is just a really good control piece, allowing him to detach one of the cards from himself and then send a card that your opponent controls that you can target to the graveyard, getting past Unchained's destruction nonsense, which is very, very powerful. But both of these cards can be special summoned with your opponent's monsters that you steal, because that's another thing that vampires do, is they steal your opponent's monsters and treat them as the necessary level as needed. Both decks are pretty interesting in their own right, but because I've never tried out vampires, I really wanted to give them a go, so most of the games you'll be seeing in this video are going to be this loner vampire deck. How will it stack up in the event? Let's find out in a few games. Alright, getting into our first game here with the vampires, we are going second, which is not that bad with this deck, but our opponent is also going to be playing the vampire deck, using Unizombie to discard Mezuki and ditch the Mad Mauler. Not the perfect target with this deck, but hey, I don't really know what I'm doing with it either. My opponent's going to immediately Ghost Fusion, which is pretty freaking terrifying, not gonna lie, to go into the Draco Necro Nether Soul Dragon. It's a pretty beefy card that's hard for Unchained to deal with, which is why it's in the deck, but personally, I'm not that impressed with that outside of this event. We're going to go ahead and draw our third Mezuki, because why wouldn't we? We're going to go ahead and use the Vampire Domain to get our second normal summon off of the Vampire Ghost, normal summon Mezuki alongside it, ditch the other Vampire Domain to grab a Voivode. From there, I'm going to go ahead and ditch the Familiar, not the Bat. We're going to go ahead and use Ghost and Mezuki as link material for Vampire Sucker. We're going to give them back their Mad Mauler, which is going to allow us to draw a card, which draws us into the Spell Card Monster Reborn, which is pretty nice. We're going to use Mezuki's effect to go ahead and special summon back our Vampire Ghost. We're going to use Spell Card Monster Reborn to steal their Unizombie, just so we can have as many materials as possible. We're going to use our Sucker and their Unizombie to go ahead and bring back the Vampire Fascinator, which is pretty cool because now I have a vampire on board with Vampire Fascinator. Basically, I contribute with the Vampire Fascinator another vampire to take control of one of my opponent's monsters, which I'm going to go ahead and do after I use my Link Summon effect for Fascinator to steal one of their cards from the graveyard, use Unizombie's effect to ditch a Vampire Bat and the Meizuki from hand so I can keep my summoning going. We're going to steal their Drago Nether Soul Dragon, use Retainer's effect to bring it back. We're going to use Ghost's effect to also go ahead and get an extra normal summon with it, which allows me to summon Voivod, which is a very, very powerful vampire. We're going to use Retainer to grab Domination, so now I have a negate, and I can potentially have a negate with Voivod, but it's fine. I'm going to use Voivod's effect to, after tributing monsters with it, to bring back Unizombie. Use Unizombie and their dragon to bring out Dompier Vampire. You're going to go ahead and ditch the Mad Mauler. Then I'm going to use Dompier's effect to go ahead and summon the Mad Mauler, because why not? I can. I'm going to go ahead and use Vampire Familiar's effect to ditch the spell card from my field to grab Fraulein. I don't really know what to grab at this point, so I'm like, okay, whatever, who cares? I'm going to go ahead and summon the Avendred Savior. And then I'm going to go into battle phase, thinking I can win the game. My opponent summons Fraulein, and I'm like, okay, we're going to have a Fraulein fight, let's do this. So if you don't know, Vampire Fraulein has a very interesting effect, where if a monster declares an attack, you can special summon it from your hand defensive position, and once per battle, if you're a zombie monster battles an opponent's monster, you can pay multiple life points, up to 3,000, to have your battling monster gain that much attack and defense. So with Fraulein on their board, and on my board, I can just go, okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and gain this much to run over your card. I misread the card in the moment, though. I thought it reduced the attack of your opponent's monster and didn't increase your attack and defense, so I just needed to spend 700. Did not need to spend that many life points, but it's fine. My opponent is going to try to spell card Monster Reborn. They're going to bring back their Mad Mauler. I could use Dominion on this as a counter because I have a Vampire face up, but they're going to go ahead and try to get the Ween off, and I'm going to go ahead and Dominion this because, or Domination, my bad, not Dominion. Basically, Vampire Domination is a counter trap that only works if you have a face up Vampire monster, and it lets you just counter. It's an Omni negate. It's very powerful, and if it was a monster, you gain life points equal to their attack. From there, my opponent's just going to pass the turn back to me. From here, I'm going to go ahead and tribute my Fascinator, steal their Mad Mauler, get in with the Voivode, and clear out my opponent. And that is the kind of nonsense you can do. You can steal from the grave, you can steal from the board. Vampires can do all sorts of really nasty and silly things. Alright, getting here into our next game with vampires, we have another pretty solid hand, and again, we don't mind going second. It gives us more of a graveyard for us to work with from our opponent's end. We got a Vampire Ghost and a Mizuki and a Vampire's Domain with a smaller vampire, so we've got a lot of things we can do. My opponent is going to summon Rescue Hedgehog. I didn't even know this card was in the Fiend deck. It's not a Fiend. It's adorable. I mean, look at him with the little shovel. Just want to boop him on the nose. Anyway, sorry about that. Well, they're going to go ahead and banish it to activate its effect to summon Sangan and Hallo. Very thematic card. They're going to go ahead and use both of these cards to go ahead and Synchro Summon? What could it be? It's the Earthbound Servant Geo Golem. Now, this is an interesting card because it doesn't do too much in the actual Master Duel meta, but for the event, it kind of follows theme. The theme of Hallo Ween, where on any main phase as a quick effect, you can target one of your opponent's face-up monsters, and either they choose to destroy that monster, or they choose to give you life points equal to that monster's attack. So it's kind of like a trick-or-treat kind of deal. Very thematic, not really great outside of this. I'm assuming this is for actual Earthbound to fusion summon it with it during the battle phase, because that's his other effect. Anyways, from there they're going to use Sangan to grab a Ruha, which is pretty nice. They're going to use Abomination's Prison to grab the Escape of the Unchained. And then they're going to set 2 and pass. We're going to draw into the spell card Monster Reborn. We're going to normal summon the Vampire Ghost, ditching the Familiar. My opponent is going to Dark Factory of More Production, which allows them to ditch a card from hand to the graveyard to draw a card. They're going to ditch the Abominable Unchained Soul, which is a pretty scary thing for them to do. And I'm like, alright, there's got to be a reason they're doing this, right? Well, I'm going to go ahead and use Vampire's effect to grab Voivode from my deck. And then I'm going to ditch the Retainer. I'm going to go ahead and activate the Vampire's Domain, and my opponent is going to try and Dark Spirit of Malice. This is why they ditched their Abominable Unchained Soul. It is a level 8 Fiend monster that they can special summon with Dark Spirit of Malice to try and, I guess, protect their life points. It was a good enough play, but look, the problem is, I have Spell Card Monster Reborn, and with Vampire Domain's effect, I'm going to use that monster you want to special summon to summon my Vampire Voivode, and then you're in a world of trouble. And my opponent, they just kind of see this, and I don't know if they just really didn't want their card stolen, or they just thought that was a nail in the coffin, but they decide to scoop it up. Alright, getting into our next game here, we are finally going first with Vampires, with a rather interesting hand. Now, you're going to notice I'm going to make some plays with this hand that are really confusing, but the first really good play we're going to make is we're going to use Unizombie to ditch the Ghost Sleeper from the deck to the grave, which allows us to add Ghost Fusion to our hand. We're going to use Unizombie's effect to raise this level again by discarding Meizuki, which allows me to special summon a zombie from the graveyard, and it's not once per turn. It's a very powerful effect. Very, very good stuff so far. We're going to use Vampire's Domain here. Now, originally, I'm not going to lie, I didn't do this for Ghost Fusion, which you're about to see me do. I did this because I tried to normal summon Vampire Fraulein, but she's a level 5. And this is why reading the cards explains the cards, because if I would have just read, I would have known that I couldn't normal summon this monster. But I also wouldn't have had less life points than my opponent for my Ghost Fusion, which actually does matter here in a second, because now I can use Ghost Fusion to use the Unizombie on board and the Chang-Chi from my deck, banishing it to fusion summon the Drago Necro Dragon, which allows me to use Chang-Chi's effect to banish another zombie from my graveyard, which is going to be Unizombie to bring back Chang-Chi. It all worked out in the end. We're going to go ahead and use Meizuki's effect to banish it, and then we're going to go ahead and special summon the Ghost Sleeper. We're going to use Chang-Chi's effect to ditch Meizuki. We're going to use Vampire Domain, tributing for Vampire Fraulein. Meizuki's going to bring back the Ghost Sleeper one more time. We're going to use that and Chang-Chi to summon the Avenged Savior. So now we have a bunch of combat shenanigans on my turn. Every single one of my zombies I can pay life points to basically give them more attack to run over my opponent's stuff. Revenge Slayer can make itself even more massive by discarding zombies, which will let me do even more nonsense with Meizuki. And Dragon Necro can't be destroyed by battle and will give me more cards by basically creating a token that's a copy, stat-wise and level-wise, of my opponent's monsters after battle. Lots of combat shenanigans. Not the best end board, but for this event, it's not that bad. My opponent's going to go ahead and use Salamander and Hallow here, which is a pretty nice combination of plays. If they have the tour guide, it allows them to have 3 monsters, kind of like that, so they can go into... Oh, they're going to go ahead and grab Sarama with the tour guide, so they can go into... Not Blue Dog? Why not go into like Blue or Red Dog and then use my Fraulein for material for Abomination? Either my opponent hasn't played Unchained before, or they just wanted to do something spicy. I'm not sure. Anyways, my opponent is going to attack with a Jin. I'm going to go ahead and use Fraulein's effect, pay some life points, increase her attack temporarily, and then I'm going to gain some life points out of Vampire Dominion because it has a nice little secondary effect. They're going to go ahead and grab back Salamander, and they attack into Fraulein, and I guess they just didn't read the card, which explains the card. I can do this once per battle, not once per phase, or per turn. So I'm just going to activate it again and gain some more life points. And they're going to go ahead and send my fusion monster. But hey, Fraulein has another effect. When she destroys monsters by battle, I can bring them all back. And that's what we do. We're going to go ahead and bring back their Hallow and their Stringent, which is going to give me plenty of material. I'm going to go ahead and use Vampire's Desire here on Fraulein. My opponent is going to Call of the Haunted and Unchained Sarama. And, oh. Okay. That's a series of decisions you can make. I'm going to go ahead and ditch the level 6 Vampire to turn my Fraulein into level 6, using their Hallow and my Fraulein to make the Dompier Vampire Sheridan, which you can do, because if you use a monster with a level that is owned by your opponent for the XYZ summon of this card, treat it as level 6. Basically, you can steal your opponent's monsters from their grave or board, and if as long as you have a level 6, you can use that as a level 6 material. And here's where all the fun begins. Dhampir is going to ditch the Fraud line to send Saramas to the grave. It's not destroyed, so I get to keep your effect, and then I'm going to go ahead and special summon it because I'm just really funny like that. We're going to use Avenger and Savior and the Djinn to summon Vampire Fascinator. Fascinating, right? We're going to go ahead and steal the Djinn back anyways, and from this position, I think my opponent sees I can do a lot of really silly nonsense. I haven't even normal summoned, and with that, my opponent decides to scoop it up. So yeah, that's some silly vampire nonsense, but I wonder what the Fiends can do. Alright, let's go ahead and see what the Fiend side of the event can do as we start with Hallo in hand this time instead of Ween. Very spooky, I know. We're going to be going second here because of course we're going second. I never get to go first. My opponent is going to normal summon Hallo and pendulum summon Eccentric. Okay, not the best play, but not the worst. I do have a pretty solid hand on my end. I've got Salamander and a tour guide with the Hallo, so I'm going to go ahead and use Salamander's effect to special summon Hallo, because I can, which gives me a Fiend engrave with Salamander, so I can use Hallo's effect. My opponent is going to choose to, before even giving me the effect, Call of the Archfiend, which does nothing in this position, but who cares. And they're going to go ahead and decide, instead of giving Hallo attack, to take damage. And I'm not gonna lie, I can't fathom why my opponent did this. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Why not just give it attack, which costs you nothing? But I'm gonna go ahead and use Tour Guide to grab Sangan. And from here, I was gonna go ahead and go into Blue Dog, but I forgot I need an Unchained monster. So I'm gonna go ahead and go into Yama first. Sangan and Yama are gonna add some cards to my hand. With Yama and Sangan, we're going to search up the Abominable Unchained Soul and Archfiend Eccentric, and I don't know what's going on, but for some reason I can't use this as a pendulum. I'm not quite sure why, but it will be fine. And the end, I'm going to go ahead and use Hallo. I'm going to go ahead and just use it because I tried to pendulum summon. It doesn't matter that I can't pendulum summon. We're going to go ahead and use both of my monsters to make the Red Dog, and Red Dog is going to allow me to link off with Hallo, my opponent's board, to link summon the almighty Unchained Abomination. The big dog is here. My opponent is going to Call of the Haunted back Hallo. I'm not sure why they did that. It just gives me more things to destroy, because after any monster is destroyed in battle, I can just destroy any one target on the board. I'm going to go ahead and use Salamander's effect to just bring itself back. My opponent is going to Hallo into Abominable Unchained Soul. They're going to send my big dog to the graveyard. I'm going to go ahead and bring back the Catalyzer. My opponent is going to destroy a card on my side of the board, which, first and foremost, Yama activates because something was destroyed. And then Abominable Unchained Soul activates. I kind of messed up my timings here a little bit because the idea was that I wanted to just bring this back. But I also wanted to get a pop off with this, but I forgot I need to pop Abominable Unchained Soul when I do that. I'm rusty with Unchained, okay? I'm going to go ahead and play my Pendulum monster because I have a second one on board. I'm going to go ahead and use Unchained Abomination to pop their card, setting them back to 0. Yeah, Tour Guide works. Then you can go into Blue Dog. No, we're going to go into our own Yama to go ahead and grab a card from the graveyard, bring back their Abominable Unchained Soul. They're going to attack into my Unchained Abomination, which lets me destroy their trap, which lets them bring back their Abominable Unchained Soul. It's fine, this ain't a big deal. Go ahead and pop their card. They're going to bring back the Sarama, destroy the Sarama, use Sarama's effect to special summon their Unchained Soul Disaster attack with their Unchained Abominable Soul, and then get 900 points of damage in. Not a crazy turn for my opponent, but hey, in this event, it's pretty darn good. Unfortunately for my opponent, I do have the Catalyzer and another Hallo in hand. It doesn't really matter. I have more than one Fiend and a Tour Guy with Catalyzer. And when Hallo's effect activates, my opponent does the most base thing they can do, and they take more burn damage. And I was gonna attack with Hallo for game, but you know what? Burning them out with Hallo for game seems pretty silly too. So let's go ahead and get into the wrap-up of this really wacky. With those games out of the way, our time in the Hallo Ween tryout duel event comes to a close. Was either deck particularly meta-breaking or good? I'm just going to be honest, I don't think so. There's not a lot of hand traps in either or, but I think that's not the point of the event. The point is you get to try out these new ridiculous little spirit cards that aren't really great, but hey, they're fun, and you get to try out either Vampires or Unchained, that I know some people might not have played Unchained before, especially because Unchained is only really popular right now in Duel, or in cases like mine, some people haven't played Vampires before, and you get to try out this really weird Monarch style zombie deck that has some really interesting monsters. In my opinion, Dompier Vampire Sheridan is the most interesting and is the one card that makes me actually want to try this strategy again. But we'll see if we can come back to Vampires in the future. For now, I'd like to bring a close to this event. I had a lot of fun with it, and that's all I really think it's supposed to be. It's a silly little event, so you can try out silly little cards. So, thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this event as much as I enjoyed playing it and doing a little bit of recording for you guys, especially for my favorite holiday of the year. Man, I can't talk. Thank you for tuning in, folks. I've been the Ghost with Knife. Now, do me a big ol' favor and get the hell out of here.